Every year, thousands of violent crimes and disappearances happen within just a few miles of highway exits. And oddly enough, one of the most common places those incidents begin is somewhere you've probably stopped at without a second thought. A gas station, bright lights, security cameras. Open 24 hours. It feels safe. But after working the night shift at one for 6 months, I realized something. The lights don't make you safe. They just make it easier to see, when something is wrong. And once you notice it, it's already too late. Story 1. The man who never stepped out of his car. 1,000 words. My name is Daniel. I am 26, and at the time this happened, I was working the night shift at a small gas station, just off Highway 81 in Oklahoma. It wasn't a bad job, honestly. Boring most nights. A few truckers, the occasional late-night snack run. Maybe someone grabbing cigarettes at 2 a.m. Nothing unusual. At least that's what I thought when I first started. The station sat in this weird in-between area, far enough from town to feel isolated, but close enough that you'd still get traffic every now and then. Behind it was nothing but open land. No houses, no lights, just darkness, the kind that swallows sound. My shift usually ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. alone, which at first I didn't mind. I'd bring headphones, watch videos, maybe scroll on my phone when things were quiet. The cameras covered most of the lot anyway, so it felt controlled, predictable. Until one night around 2:30 a.m. a car pulled in. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was how it stopped. It didn't pull up to a pump right away. Instead, it rolled slowly into the lot and just sat there. Engine running, headlights still on, facing the building. I remember glancing up at the security monitor first, then out the window. The car hadn't moved. Maybe they're checking directions, I muttered to myself. It happens. People get lost. Still, something about it felt off. I couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the way the headlights were pointed directly at the front door like they were watching. Or maybe it was just the silence. No music, no movement inside. Just the low hum of the engine. After about a minute, the car finally moved slowly, pulling up to pump number 3. I relaxed a little. See, normal. The driver didn't get out right away, though. He just sat there. Again. Another minute passed. Then, 2. I leaned forward slightly, trying to get a better look through the window, but the glare from the lights made it hard to see inside. Finally, I grabbed the small intercom mic connected to the pumps. Hey, pump 3. Everything okay out there? There was a pause. Then after a few seconds, a voice came through. Yeah, it was low, flat, like he wasn't really talking to me. Just saying the word. You need me to reset the pump or anything, I asked. Another pause. Number. That was it. Just no. I frowned a bit, setting the mic down. Weird. But not dangerous, just weird. Another minute went by. Still no movement, no door opening, no footsteps, no sound of gas pumping, just the engine. At this point, I started to feel that itch in the back of my head. You know the one, that quiet voice that says something's not right. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But after about 5 minutes of nothing happening, I picked up the mic again. Sir, are you actually getting gas? Because the pump hasn't been activated. Silence. Then, I know. That answer made my stomach tighten. Why would you just sit there, knowing you're not pumping gas? I stood there for a second, staring out the window. The headlights were still on, still aimed right at the building, right at me. Okay, I said slowly. Do you need help with something? This time the response came quicker. No, I just need you to come outside. I froze. That was the moment everything shifted. Up until then, it was just a weird interaction. Now it felt different. Wrong. Every training guideline I'd been given flashed through my head at once. Never leave the building if you feel unsafe. Lock the doors if necessary. Trust your instincts. I forced a small laugh, trying to keep my voice casual. I can help you from here, man. If there's an issue, just let me know. There was a long pause, longer than before. And then, I can't open the door. I blinked. What? My door, he said. It won't open. I felt a flicker of hesitation, because that could be real. Car doors jam. It happens. But something still didn't sit right. Try the unlock button, I suggested. I did. From inside. Yes. Okay. I hesitated. Can you roll down your window? Another pause. Then, number. That was it. That was the moment my gut went from uneasy to screaming. No door, no window, no attempt to fix anything. Just sitting there, wanting me to come outside. I stepped back from the counter, slowly, trying not to make it obvious. I think you might need to call roadside assistance, I said, keeping my tone even. I'm not really allowed to leave the building. Silence. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat now. Then the voice came back, lower this time, almost irritated. You're really not going to come out here? No, I said. And for the first time, I meant it without hesitation. There was no response, just silence. And then the engine shut off. The headlights went dark. For a second, I couldn't see anything. The entire lot outside the building was swallowed by darkness again, except for the faint glow of the station lights. I stared, waiting. Nothing. No door opening. No movement. Just a car, sitting there, dead. I reached for the phone behind the counter, not dialing yet, just ready. A full minute passed, maybe 2. Then suddenly, the engine started again. The headlights flicked back on, and without warning, the car reversed sharply, tires crunching against the gravel, and sped out of the lot. Gone. Just like that. I stood there frozen, trying to process what had just happened. I told myself it was nothing, just a weird guy. Maybe he really did have a broken door. Maybe he got frustrated and left. Yeah, that had to be it. Right. Yes. The next morning when my shift ended, I was talking to the day manager, Karen. While she counted the register, I mentioned the guy, just casually, trying to laugh it off, but she didn't laugh. She just looked at me and said, "Did you go outside?" "No," I said. "Good." Something about the way she said that made my stomach drop. Why, I asked. She hesitated, then sighed. About 3 weeks ago, a guy working the night shift at a station about 40 miles from here got attacked in the parking lot. I felt a chill run down my spine. They said the customer asked him to come outside for help. She continued. Something about his car. My throat went dry. What happened to him? Karen didn't answer right away. She just shook her head slightly. He didn't make it. I didn't say anything after that. I just nodded, clocked out, and drove home. But here's the thing that still bothers me. The part I can't explain. When I checked the security footage later that week, the car pulled in exactly like I remembered, sat in the lot, moved to pump 3. Everything matched, except for one detail. The entire time that car was parked there, the driver's side door was already open. Story 2. The child in the back seat, 1,000 words. My name's Marissa. I was 31 when this happened, and I was working overnights at a gas station outside Amarillo, Texas. It was one of those stations right off the interstate that stayed busy in waves, dead silent for 40 minutes. Then suddenly, 6 cars would roll in at once like the universe had synchronized everyone's bladder and gas tank. Truckers with tired eyes, college kids buying energy drinks and beef jerky, couples arguing in whispers, people who looked like they had been awake for 3 days, and people who definitely shouldn't have been driving. Night shift teaches you a weird lesson pretty fast. Everybody looks suspicious at 3 a.m. The trick is figuring out who actually is. That night had been boring in the best way. I'd cleaned the coffee station twice, just to have something to do. Reorganized the candy shelf. and spent a good 10 minutes debating whether the hot dog rollers were technically food or just some kind of legal experiment. It was around 3:15 in the morning when an old beige SUV pulled up to Pump 6. I only noticed it because it came in fast, then braked hard enough to make the front dip. Not screeching, not dramatic, just the kind of stop that says the driver is either exhausted or distracted. Amata got out from this driver's side almost immediately, late 40s maybe. Thin, baseball cap, work jacket. He moved quickly like he had somewhere to be, but there was something forced about it. His shoulders were too tight. His eyes kept darting around, not in a paranoid way exactly, more like he was checking whether anybody was paying attention. Then he saw me watching through the window and gave me this little nod, a polite normal nod. That should have made him seem less strange. Instead, it did the opposite. He swiped his card at the pump and started filling up. Nothing unusual there. But while the gas was running, he never once looked at his phone. Never stretched. Never leaned on the car. He just stood there with one hand on the nozzle and the other hanging awkwardly at his side, staring straight ahead at the road, like he was waiting for something to appear or for something to catch up. I probably would have forgotten him 30 seconds later if I hadn't glanced toward the back seat. At first I thought it was a bag, then it moved. There was a little kid back there, maybe 6 or 7 years old. Hard to tell through the tinted glass and fluorescent glare. What stood out wasn't just that the child was awake at that hour. Kids are awake at weird times all the time. It was the way they were sitting, perfectly upright, face turned toward the station, looking directly at me. I'm not being dramatic when I say I stopped moving for a second. There was something deeply wrong about how still that child was. No fidgeting, no blinking, that I could see no little hand pressed to the glass. Just this small, pale face in the shadows staring. I told myself not to be weird about it. Kids stare. Maybe they were half asleep. Maybe I'd just watched too many true crime videos on my breaks. But then the man left the pump running and hurried inside. He came straight to the counter carrying a bottle of water and one of those little travel packs of aspirin. Up close, he looked worse than I'd thought. His skin had that grayish, washed-out look people get when they're either very sick or running entirely on adrenaline. "Just these," he said. His voice sounded normal, maybe a little breathless. I rang him up and forced a smile. "Long drive." He nodded. "Yeah. Where you headed?" "East." That was all he gave me. Not unusual, technically. Plenty of people don't feel like making small talk at 3 in the morning. But most people at least pretend to be human for 10 seconds while you're handing them a receipt. He didn't. As I passed the bag over, I said, "You've got your kid with you." His expression changed for just half a second. Not enough for somebody else to notice, maybe. But I did. It wasn't surprise. It was calculation. Then he shrugged. "My niece." I glanced out toward the SUV. "She okay?" "She looks kind of tired." I picked that word carefully. Tired. Neutral. None of your business, but still conversational. He smiled then. It was a bad smile. Too quick. Too empty. Like he remembered too late that smiling was a thing people did. "Yeah," he said. "She's been asleep most of the ride." I nodded. But every alarm bell in my body had started ringing. Because the child hadn't looked asleep. The child had looked awake, wide awake, watching. The man took his bag and started to leave. And before I could stop myself, I said, "Sir." He turned. For a second, I almost bailed on whatever instinct was telling me to keep him there. I almost made some dumb comment about reward points or the weather. But then I looked back out at the SUV and saw the child again, still staring, still perfectly still. And I heard myself say, "Would your niece like a snack? We've got some juice boxes that are about to expire. I can just give one to her." That wasn't true. They weren't about to expire. I just wanted an excuse to get him delayed long enough to think. He hesitated. There it was again, that tiny pause, like he was running possibilities in his head. Then he gave that same awful smile. "No, she's fine," and he turned toward the door. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the fact that I have a younger sister. Maybe it was the weird, frozen look on that kid's face. Maybe it was just the hour, and the fluorescent lights, and the feeling that if I let him drive away, I'd hear about it on the news 2 days later, and spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have done something. Whatever the reason, I picked up the phone under the counter and called 911 quietly. I kept my eyes on him through the front glass as the dispatcher answered. 911. "What's your emergency?" "I work at the quick stop off of 40 exit 73, I whispered. "There's a man here with a child in the back seat, and something feels wrong." "I know that sounds stupid, but it doesn't sound stupid," the dispatcher said immediately. "Tell me what you're seeing." That actually steadied me a little. I described the SUV, the plate, the man, the child, how still she was. The dispatcher asked if the child appeared injured. I said I didn't know. Asked if there had been any direct signs of violence. I said no, but something about the situation felt off. Then the dispatcher said, "Can you safely keep him there?" I looked around the store like the answer might be taped next to the lottery posters. "I can try." That was when the man finished pumping, got back in the SUV, and started to pull away. Panic hit me all at once. "Wait," I told the dispatcher. "He's leaving." And then I really cannot believe I did this. I ran out the front door, waving the receipt. "Sir," I shouted. "Sir, your card." He braked. Not hard. Just enough. He rolled the window down 2 inches. That was the first time I got a clear look at him sitting in the driver's seat. His whole face had changed. The polite customer mask was gone. He looked furious. Not loud, not wild, just cold and angry, in this focused way that made my blood run cold. "You forgot your receipt," I said, holding it out. He stared at me. "I don't want it." I stepped a little closer, pretending not to notice that every hair on my arms had lifted. "It has your fuel total. Some people need it for." I said I don't want it. Behind him, the child moved. Not much, just enough to lean slightly toward the center of the car. And that's when I saw it, a small hand, raised awkwardly. Not waving exactly, more like reaching or signaling. The man noticed my eyes move and immediately twisted halfway around in his seat, blocking my view. Then he threw the SUV into drive. He peeled out of the lot so fast the rear tires spit gravel across the concrete apron. I stood there shaking, still holding the stupid receipt. The police got there 6 minutes later. 6 minutes feels very fast when you're waiting for breakfast tacos. It feels like 6 years when you think a child might be in danger. I gave them everything I had. Plate number, direction description. One of the officers asked me what exactly had seemed wrong. I remember feeling embarrassed, like I had wasted everyone's time on a vibe. But the older officer didn't laugh. He just wrote it all down and said, "You'd be surprised how often vibes save lives." They left. I finished my shift feeling sick. 2 days later, detectives came back. The little girl was safe. She wasn't his niece. He'd taken her from a family member during a custody dispute and had been driving for hours avoiding major stops. They found the SUV at a motel outside Elk City. The child told investigators she had tried to look at the gas station lady because her mom had taught her that if she ever felt unsafe, she should make eye contact with another adult. That part broke me a little. Not because I did anything heroic. I didn't. I just paid attention. What messed me up was the thought that if I'd been restocking chips, or scrolling on my phone, or deciding whether roller hot dogs counted as a crime against nature, I might not have looked out that window at the right time. I still think about that kid sometimes, mostly when someone says it was probably nothing. Because sometimes nothing is just danger trying very hard to look ordinary. Story 3. The woman who asked me to lock the door. 1,000 words. My name is Trevor. I was 24, living outside Albuquerque and working graveyard shifts at a gas station because college had stopped being financially possible and rent had not. That's the glamorous backstory. If you've never worked overnights, here's the condensed version. You start out thinking it'll be peaceful, maybe even cozy in a weird way. You imagine coffee podcasts and the occasional friendly trucker. Then around week 3, you realize the night has its own population, and some of them should not be trusted with shoelaces, much less motor vehicles. The station where I worked was small, but busy enough to stay open all night. We had one cashier, one tiny back room, and a front door that technically locked, but had to be yanked like you were starting an old lawnmower. There was a dead patch in the parking lot where one of the overhead lights flickered every few minutes, which felt like the universe trying too hard. That night was slow and strangely warm for October. Around 2:50 a.m., I was wiping down the counter and listening to a guy on a podcast explain why ancient civilizations probably didn't build laser pyramids or whatever, when a woman burst through the front door. Not walked in, burst. She looked to be in her early 30s maybe. Dark hair pulled loose from a ponytail hoodie, half-zipped, one sneaker untied. She wasn't bloody or visibly injured, but she looked terrified in the most authentic way possible. Not dramatic, not performative, just raw panic. She came straight to the counter and said, "Lock the door." No hello, no explanation, just that. I stared at her for a second. "What? Please," she said, breathless. "Please lock the door." There are some requests that are so specific, your body reacts before your brain does. Mine did. I hit the lock switch under the counter without taking my eyes off her. The bolt clicked. She exhaled sharply and turned to look back through the glass. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "What's going on?" She pressed both palms against the edge of the counter like she needed something solid to keep herself upright. "I need to use your phone." "You can use this one." I slid the store phone toward her. Her hands were shaking badly enough that she nearly knocked it off the counter. She punched in a number from memory and held it to her ear. No answer. She hung up and tried again. Still nothing. She looked like she might cry, but instead she just swallowed hard and stared at the window. "Is somebody following you?" I asked. She nodded once. That was enough for my heart rate to go from mildly annoyed cashier to fully awake mammal. "Who?" "My boyfriend," she said. "Ex-boyfriend. I don't know. He's not supposed to know where I am." That sentence did not improve the situation. "Did he hurt you?" "No," she said too fast. Then quieter, "Not tonight." "Great. Awesome. Love that addition." I picked up my cell phone and said, "I'm calling the cops." She snapped her head toward me. The force of it surprised me. "No cops," she said again. I frowned. "If somebody's chasing you," I said, "no cops." Now fear does weird things to people, so I didn't take the outburst personally. But it did complicate my read on her. She looked terrified, yes, but there was also something sharp behind it. Not just fear control, like she was trying very hard to direct the scene. I lowered the phone slightly. "Okay. Then what do you want me to do?" She looked toward the road. "Just let me stay here a minute. If he sees I'm inside, maybe he'll keep driving." Reasonable enough, at least on paper. I offered her water. She took it, but didn't open it. Just held the bottle so tightly the plastic crackled. For the next couple of minutes, she paced between the coffee station and the front door, checking the parking lot every few seconds. I asked if she had somewhere safe to go. She said yes. Asked if anyone could pick her up. She said she'd called her sister. Asked where her car was. She said she'd left it at a friend's place. Everything sounded plausible, and yet every answer felt just slightly out of alignment, like hearing a familiar song played half a beat too slow. Then headlights swung into the lot. A pickup truck, dark red. Older model. It rolled past the windows once slow enough to make my skin tighten, then stopped near the far pump under the flickering light. The woman went rigid. "That's him," she whispered. I looked toward the truck. The driver stayed inside. No door opened. No movement except the idle shudder of the engine. "Stay back here," I said. Which was funny because I am not built like someone who should ever say "stay back here" in a crisis. I'm basically an anxious lamp with student debt. But the sentence came out anyway. I picked up my phone again. This time she grabbed my wrist. Hard. "Don't." I looked at her hand on me, then back at her face. There was fear there. Yes, but there was something else now too. Desperation of a different kind. Not fear of being found. Fear of being checked. "Why not?" I asked quietly. She let go. "Because if they run my name, it'll just make everything worse." Every instinct I had sharpened at once. That's not a sentence a normal victim leads with. "What do you mean?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Out in the lot, the pickup driver finally got out. Big guy. Broad shoulders. Work boots. He walked toward the door, not charging, not angry, just quick and focused. The woman backed away from the counter like she might run. I held up a hand to him through the glass. "We're closed." He pointed toward her and shouted something I couldn't hear through the door. She shook her head violently. "Don't let him in." The man pulled out his phone and held it up like he was about to call someone. Then he shouted again, louder this time. I still couldn't make out all the words, but I caught one. "Daughter." I felt the air change. I turned slowly toward the woman. She looked like she knew the exact second the story had stopped working. "What daughter?" I asked. She said nothing. The man outside was banging on the glass now, not wildly, just hard enough to make the door shudder. "She took my daughter!" he yelled. Okay, so that was new. I stepped back from both of them at once, which is difficult to do physically, but pretty easy emotionally. My brain was now trying to solve a puzzle, while both puzzle pieces screamed at me. The woman's face crumpled. He's lying. Maybe he was. But I had no way of knowing, and now the one thing I was certain of was that I was no longer dealing with a simple domestic situation. I called 911. Finally, decisively, no more debate. The woman lunged across the counter to stop me, and that was the moment everything tilted from tense to dangerous. She wasn't trying to grab the phone. She was trying to get past me toward the back hall, where the employee exit was. I shoved the swinging half door shut with my hip and stumbled backward. She hit it hard enough to rattle the candy rack. Her whole expression had changed. Not scared anymore. Cornered. "Move," she hissed. And that word, that cold, furious little word, told me more than everything else put together. I got the dispatcher on speaker as the man outside kept shouting, and the woman kept trying to push through the counter gate. I yelled the address, said there was some kind of abduction or custody situation, and the dispatcher told me officers were already being sent. The next 2 minutes were chaos. The woman started crying again. But now it felt performative, surging on and off depending on whether she thought it might work on me. She said he was abusive. Then she said the child was safer with her. Then she said I didn't understand. All of that may even have been true. But there was still a child in the middle of it. And the only thing either adult seemed to care about was winning. When police finally arrived, the pickup driver stepped back immediately and raised his hands. The woman bolted for the employee exit. She made it through the back door before an officer caught her in the alley beside the ice machine. Turns out there really was a child, a little girl 4 years old, asleep in the back of the woman's car, behind the dumpster where I hadn't even known someone had parked. That part still haunts me. The kid slept through the whole thing, like this was normal. I found out later the woman had lost temporary custody earlier that week. She'd taken the child during a supervised visit and run. The man in the truck was the girl's father, and he'd tracked her phone to the station lot after she used an old banking app. Here's why that night still bothers me. I think she was genuinely afraid, just not of what she claimed. She wasn't afraid of an abusive ex chasing her through the night. She was afraid of losing control. And for 10 solid minutes, I almost let her turn me into part of the escape plan, because panic is persuasive, especially when it arrives wearing the right costume. So yeah, when people ask whether working nights made me believe in evil, I usually say no, mostly because evil sounds too dramatic. What I believe in is this: there are people who can sound exactly like they need help, and sometimes that's the most dangerous thing about them. Story 4. The same car came back. 3 times 1,000 words. My name is Eli. I'm 29, and for about 8 months I worked nights at a gas station in western Kansas, where the wind never stopped, and the nearest real town was just far enough away to make every problem feel personal. If you've never spent a full night in the middle of nowhere, let me explain something. Silence isn't actually silent. There's the buzz of lights, the metallic ping of cooling engines, insects hitting the windows, the refrigeration unit humming in the back, and underneath it all, this weird pressure from the dark itself, like the land is holding its breath. Most nights, I kept myself sane by making little games out of routine. Guess which customers would buy lottery tickets. Count how many times truckers said just the usual. Try not to eat the store nacho cheese, which looked and smelled like a chemical apology. It was around 1:40 a.m. when the first car showed up, a dark blue sedan, mid-2000s model, dented front bumper, left headlight dimmer than the right. It rolled in from the highway and parked at pump 2. The driver got out, white guy, maybe 30s, thin, hoodie, ball cap low over his face. He came inside, bought $20 on pump, 2 and a bottle of Coke, paid cash, barely spoke. His hands looked dirty like grease or maybe soil under the nails. Nothing about him was memorable, except that he kept glancing over his shoulder toward the lot. I rang him up and asked Long Road. He gave a little shrug. Something like that. Then he left. On the monitor, I watched him pump gas, get back into the sedan, and drive away. End of story. Except it wasn't. About 40 minutes later, the same sedan came back. Same dented bumper, same bad headlight, same pump. My first thought was that he'd forgotten his wallet or dropped something. But this time, when the driver got out, it wasn't the same guy. At least I don't think it was. This one was heavier, older maybe, and had no hat. He walked with a slight limp. He came inside and asked for the restroom key. I just stared at him for a second. He frowned. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Sorry." Rough night. He took the key, used the restroom, returned it, and left without buying anything. I watched him drive off in the same sedan. Now there are a bunch of logical explanations for that. Friends, sharing a car, family, road trip switch. I know that, but 2 things bothered me. First, there had been no other vehicle in the lot when the first guy left, or when the second guy arrived. So if they'd switched drivers, they had done it somewhere else in that 40-minute gap. Second, the front passenger seat looked empty both times. No one else visible. By 3 a.m., I'd mostly convinced myself I was overthinking it. Then the sedan came back a third time. Same pump, same car, and the driver this time was a woman. I actually laughed out loud when I saw her get out, because by then, the whole thing felt so absurd. My brain had briefly filed it under sleep deprivation hallucination. She was maybe mid-20s, with blonde hair tied back, and one of those oversized sweatshirts people wear when they're traveling. She walked inside with her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. "Can I get cigarettes?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "Sure." "What kind?" As I grabbed them, I studied her face. She looked exhausted. Not high, not frantic, just drained. And here's the weirdest part. She looked like she'd been crying. "You okay?" I asked before I could stop myself. She blinked like the question had come from very far away. "What? You just seem..." I gestured vaguely. "Never mind." She gave a tiny, humorless laugh. "Yeah, long night." That phrase again. I scanned the cigarettes and tried to sound casual. "You traveling with family?" Her eyes snapped to mine. Just for a second. Then she looked away. "Something like that." I felt my stomach knot. Same weird answer. Same car. 3 different drivers. As she was paying, I noticed a bruise on the inside of her wrist, old enough to be yellowing at the edges. I handed her the receipt and said very softly, "If you need me to call someone, I can." Her face changed. Not in relief, not exactly. More like shock that I had said it out loud. Then she looked past me out the front window, and whatever was in her expression shut down immediately. "No," she said. "I'm fine." She left. I watched her get into the driver's seat and pull away. I stood there for a full 10 seconds staring at the empty lot after she was gone, trying to decide whether I was losing my mind. Then I did what any modern employee with too much anxiety and access to security equipment would do. I pulled up the camera footage. I started with the first visit. Blue sedan arrives. Hoodie guy exits. Comes inside. Fine. Then I checked the lot footage more carefully. As the first guy is pumping gas, the rear passenger door opens. Someone gets out. Not clearly enough for me to see who, just a dark figure moving on the far side of the car, hidden from the front window. I backed it up, played it again. The figure crouched for a second near the rear wheel, then moved out of frame. The first guy finished pumping and drove off, but now I knew the car hadn't been occupied by just one person. I checked the second visit. Limping man arrives, and before he comes inside, the trunk opens. He stands there for maybe 3 seconds, blocking the view, then closes it. My mouth went dry. Maybe luggage, maybe tools, maybe literally anything innocent. Except I didn't believe that anymore. I jumped to the third visit. The woman parked, sat there for a moment, then got out. Just before she opened the station door, she glanced back toward the rear seat. And on camera, even with the grainy footage and the bad angle, I could see it. Movement. Someone was back there. Someone low down between the seats maybe. Not sitting upright. Curled. My hand was already on the phone before I consciously decided to call. I told dispatch everything, including the plate number from the camera zoom. I expected skepticism. What I got instead was immediate focus. An officer said units were nearby and to stay inside. 15 minutes later, the sedan returned. 4th time. This time it didn't even go to a pump. It rolled into the side lot near the air machine and stopped. No one got out. I could barely breathe. 2 sheriff's vehicles came in dark from the service road with their lights off until the last second. Then everything exploded blue and red. The sedan tried to back up, hit the curb, and stalled. Deputies swarmed it. I watched the whole thing through bulletproof glass, with a bag of barbecue chips in my hand. Because stress makes people do ridiculous things. Apparently my trauma response is snacking. They pulled 2 men from the car, the woman too, and from the back seat, a teenage boy, hands zip-tied, mouth taped, still alive. I had to sit down after that. My knees just gave up. No cinematic collapse, just a very undignified slide down the cigarette cabinet. Turns out the three adults were connected. The details were ugly and not fully public, but the basic story was that they'd abducted the kid from another county after some kind of dispute involving drugs, money, and family. They had been switching drivers repeatedly to avoid drawing attention and stopping at isolated stations to regroup because they thought small places meant sleepy employees, which, to be fair, is offensive, but not entirely inaccurate. What gets me is this: the woman had a chance. When I asked if she needed help, there was a moment, a real one, when I think she wanted to say yes. Not because she was innocent. She absolutely wasn't, but because people in bad situations still recognize exits when they see them. She chose not to take it, and the kid in the back seat almost paid for that choice. After the detectives left the next day, I asked my manager if weird stuff happened often out there. He shrugged and said, "Only when people think no one's watching." That line stuck with me. Because the truth is, night shift isn't about seeing monsters. It's about noticing patterns, a car that doesn't make sense, an answer repeated too exactly, a bruise, a glance, a trunk opened 3 seconds too long. That's the real horror sometimes, not the scream, the pattern right before it. Story 5. The camera saw someone. I never did 1,000 words. My name is Nicole. I was 34 and working at a 24-hour gas station outside Flagstaff after my divorce, because apparently heartbreak and minimum wage have a loyalty program. I had started taking the graveyard shifts on purpose, not because I liked people less, though that was certainly not hurting anything, but because the nights gave me a kind of quiet I hadn't had in years. No one asking questions, no family pitying me, no forced smiles at church or grocery stores. Just me, the coffee machines, and an unhealthy relationship with powdered donuts. The station sat near a long stretch of forested highway, and in winter, the whole place felt suspended outside normal life. Snow on the shoulders of the road, pines black against the sky, steam rising from truck hoods. Beautiful in a bleak sort of way. Also an ideal setting if the universe wanted to workshop a horror movie. A few odd things had happened before the night I'm about to describe. Customers claiming someone was in the restroom when it was empty. A trucker insisting there was a person standing near pump 4 after closing, even though the camera showed nothing obvious. Another employee saying she heard knocking on the stockroom door after 3 a.m. when she was alone. I didn't put much weight on any of it. People get spooked at night. Our brains are basically unreliable interns after midnight. Then came the Tuesday shift. It had snowed earlier, and business died around 1 a.m. I was alone, mopping the back aisle, and listening to the weather radio mumble about ice warnings when the front door chime went off. I looked up. Nobody, at least nobody that I could see. The door had definitely opened. Cold air swept in. A few flecks of snow blew across the floor, but there was no customer in the entrance. I walked up front, annoyed more than scared, assuming the wind had pulled it, or someone had opened it, and stepped back out. Nothing. The lot was empty except for one semi parked near the diesel pumps. I locked the mop bucket in place and checked the aisles. No one. I checked the restrooms. Empty. I even checked the storage room because once a guy had wandered in there looking for the employee discount chips, which remains the dumbest sentence ever spoken with confidence. Nothing. So I told myself the chime was glitching and went back to work. 5 minutes later, it happened again. Door chime, cold air, no customer. That got my attention. I went straight to the monitor this time. The camera over the entrance showed the door opening inward and a figure stepping through, A person. Tall. Dark coat. Head slightly bowed. I remember leaning closer to the screen, because from where I stood in real life, there had been nobody there. But on the monitor, there absolutely was. The figure moved past the front display and disappeared into the angle between aisles 3 and 4. I dropped the mop handle and hurried to that aisle. Empty. No footsteps. No movement. No rustle of clothing. Just discount chips and windshield fluid. I checked the camera playback. Same thing. Door opens. Figure enters. Moves inside. Disappears from one camera angle. Never appears on the next camera. My scalp actually tingled. I wish I had a cooler reaction to stuff like this. But I don't. I become very practical very quickly, which in my case means I start narrating to myself like a panicked wildlife documentarian. Okay, I said out loud to no one. Either this is a camera issue or I'm having a complete mental break. Neither option was great. I called my manager, who didn't answer because of course he didn't. Then I called the guy from the semi outside to ask if he was currently messing with me, for reasons that would take years to unpack. He sounded half asleep and deeply offended, so that was helpful. At 2:17 a.m., the chime went off a third time. I didn't leave the counter. I watched the monitor. The same figure entered, same height, same coat. This time it stopped near the coffee station, just stood there. My mouth went dry, because from the counter I could see the coffee station directly, and there was nobody there. But on the screen there was, standing, still, facing the counter, facing me. I don't really have words for what that does to your body. Seeing something on a screen that your eyes insist is not in the room. It's like your brain gets split down the middle, one half screaming to run the other, trying to explain pixels and shadows and technical malfunction, while your hands start shaking anyway. Then the figure on the monitor raised one arm, slowly, and pointed toward the back hall. I stumbled backward hard enough to hit the cigarette cabinet. Nope, I said to the store in general. Absolutely not. I called 911. I told them I knew how it sounded, and I did not care. There was either an intruder not visible to me, somehow, or a camera malfunction severe enough to qualify as spiritual harassment. While I was on the phone, the front door opened again. This time a real customer came in. A woman in a parka, maybe 50s road trip type, asking for coffee and directions. I nearly cried from relief. While she poured coffee, I kept glancing between her very normal physical body and the monitor over her shoulder. The figure was still there on screen, now standing near the freezer doors behind her. The woman noticed my face and said, "Honey, you look like you've seen a ghost." I actually laughed once, short and ugly, working on it. She came up to the counter, and as I rang her up, she leaned in and said, "There's someone outside by your ice machine." I froze. What? She nodded toward the lot. Tall person, dark coat, just standing there. I turned to the window, and for the first time that night, I saw someone. At the edge of the lot near the ice freezer, a tall shape stood in the dark coat. Head bowed, exactly like on the camera. The woman looked back too, you know them, number. The dispatcher was still on speaker asking me to repeat what I was seeing. I told them there was now actually someone outside. The customer quietly took a step away from the window. Then the person moved, not toward the store, toward the road. Slow, steady steps through the snow at the side of the building. I could see the footprints forming behind them in the white slush. That detail matters because it's the only reason I didn't write the whole thing off later as stress. Police arrived within minutes, but by then the person was gone. The officers checked around the building, the tree line beyond the service road, the dumpsters everywhere. No one, but they did find something else. Fresh footprints leading from the side of the building to the back emergency exit, and stopping there. Not turning, not circling, stopping. That would have been unsettling enough on its own. But the back emergency exit opens outward into a narrow delivery lane. There was snow there too. No return tracks. No approach tracks from the woods. Just a line of footprints ending at a locked metal door that had not been opened all night. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I know. The officer tried to reassure me. Said drifting snow. Partial melt, weird visibility. Maybe a transient cutting through, and I'd misread the direction. All reasonable theories. Then he checked the security system. The back hall camera had gone static from 2:14 to 2:19 a.m., exactly the period when the figure on the front monitor had pointed that way. He didn't have a tidy explanation for that. Neither did I. I finished the shift because I was too stubborn to leave and too broke to be dramatic about it. Around dawn, I reviewed the footage with my manager. Every time the figure appeared, it came in through the front door on camera. But the entry sensor only recorded one actual opening before the real customer arrived. The 3 earlier entries existed only on video. No door log, no bell trigger in the system history, just the footage and me. I quit 2 weeks later though, not just because of that. My manager replacing hazard pay with "we have free creamer" was also a factor. Still, I think about the figure sometimes. Not because I'm convinced it was a ghost. I'm honestly not sure what I believe. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe someone was messing with the feed. Maybe there's a technical explanation that would be painfully boring and ruin my favorite terrifying story. But the thing I can't get past is this. Whatever was on that screen pointed toward the back hall before anyone knew there was anything to find there. And when the customer said she saw someone outside by the ice machine, her tone wasn't dramatic or uncertain. It was casual, like she was describing something perfectly ordinary, which means either 2 strangers shared the same hallucination or something came into that store that night and only showed itself when it felt like being seen. I prefer the boring explanation. I just don't happen to have one. Story 6. My last night on the job. 1,100 words. My name is Aaron. I was 27, living in rural Missouri, and I lasted exactly 5 months on the overnight shift before I decided I valued sleep blood pressure and remaining alive more than employee discounts on gas station pizza. Most of the stories people tell about night jobs come packaged with a little humor. You joke about weird customers' raccoons and dumpsters drunks asking if the moon is public property. And to be fair, there was plenty of that. But by my last week there, I'd already had enough unsettling encounters that my body had developed this automatic flinch whenever headlights turned into the lot after 2 a.m. I didn't think every customer was dangerous, just enough of them. The station sat at the edge of a 2-lane state route with long stretches of woods in both directions. We were open all night because truck traffic cut through constantly, but between 2 and 4 a.m., the place felt abandoned, except for whatever happened to wander in. My manager, Paul, used to say, the weird ones always show up after the bars close and before the birds wake up. For once, Paul was completely right. It was a Thursday, cold enough that the windows fogged around the edges. I'd been stocking cigarettes and pretending not to hate every life choice that had led me there when a black pickup rolled into the lot around 3:07 a.m. Nothing unusual about the truck. What was unusual was that it didn't stop at a pump. It pulled around the side of the building out of view of the front windows and parked near the air compressor. I checked the side camera. 2 men inside. Neither got out right away. Great. Already loved that. About 30 seconds later, one of them came in. Man, big guy. Beard. Hunting jacket. Mud on his boots. He moved with the loose confidence of someone who either belonged everywhere or didn't care. Whether he did. He grabbed a 6-pack of beer from the cooler. Strike one. Beer sales stop at midnight in our state. He brought it to the counter anyway, and set it down with a little smile, like he was about to charm me into rewriting alcohol law. "Can't do it," I said, "Grocer." "Come on," he said. "No one's gonna die." That sentence ages badly. I slid the beer back toward him. "Store cameras, man." He stared at me for a second, then laughed, not angry. "Not yet." "Fine." He wandered the store another minute, picked up chewing tobacco and beef jerky, paid cash, and left. On the monitor, I watched him get back into the passenger side of the truck. Then nothing happened. The truck stayed parked, engine running. 3 minutes. 5. I told myself they were eating, or arguing, or planning how to get beer somewhere else and ruin another cashier's evening. Then the driver got out. He was younger than the first guy. Maybe early 30s, wearing a gray hoodie under a work vest. He came inside alone and asked where our restroom was. I pointed. He took 2 steps, then stopped and turned back toward me. "You here by yourself?" My stomach tightened immediately. That's one of those questions that can be innocent in the daytime and absolutely never is at 3:15 in the morning. "Nope." I lied. "Manager's in the back." He nodded slowly, like filing that away. "Gotcha." Then he went to the restroom. I picked up my phone and texted Paul, who was definitely asleep and definitely not reading texts from his night clerk, titled "Some Guys Are Being Weird." The second man came back out after a minute and bought a sports drink. Same cash-only move, same too casual attitude. As I handed him change, I noticed a dark stain on the cuff of his sleeve. Could have been oil, could have been mud, could have been something I still don't like naming. He left. Again, they sat in the truck. That was the point where I should have locked the doors and called someone. I know that now. But night shift teaches you to second-guess every alarm. Because if you treated every weird person like an emergency, you'd spend half the week explaining yourself to annoyed deputies. So instead, I watched. At 3:22, another vehicle pulled in, a little silver sedan. It parked at pump 4, far side of the lot, and a woman got out. Mid-20s maybe, sweater jeans, hair in a messy bun. She looked tired, not scared. Just another normal customer. For the first time in 10 minutes, I relaxed. Then the pickup moved. It rolled away from the side lot and stopped at the pump directly behind her car. The woman started pumping gas. One of the men got out of the truck, not the bearded one. Hoodie guy. He stood there, pretending to check something in the bed of the pickup. But he kept looking toward her. I felt that ugly, specific pulse of dread in my chest. He was waiting for something. I stepped closer to the glass. The woman glanced up, noticed him, then looked away. You could see the change in her body language instantly. Shoulders tighter. One step closer to her own car. He said something to her. She shook her head. He took a step closer. I was already moving for the phone. Before I could grab it, the bearded man got out too. Now there were 2 of them. They boxed the pump island without making it obvious, one near the front of her car, one near the back. Not touching her. Not overtly threatening. Just close enough to make leaving a problem. I hit 911. This time, no hesitation. I told dispatch there were 2 men harassing a woman in our lot. And maybe worse. The dispatcher started asking questions, but honestly, my answers were mostly some variation of "please just get here." Outside, the woman set the pump handle back too early, tank clearly not full, and started toward the store. Hoodie guy moved to intercept. She backed up. Then she ran, straight for the front door. I unlocked it just as she slammed into it, half sobbing, half gasping, and nearly fell inside. I yanked the door closed behind her and hit the lock. A second later, hoodie guy hit the glass with both hands. Hard. The whole frame rattled. "Open the door," he shouted. The woman stumbled behind the counter, shaking so violently she could barely speak. "Please," she kept saying. "Please don't let them in." Bearded guy walked up slower, calmer. That somehow made him worse. He held up both hands and smiled through the glass. "She dropped something in our truck bed. We're just trying to help." "Sure, and I'm the king of Norway." "Nope," I shouted back. "Cops are coming." The smile disappeared. For about 3 seconds, everything went still. Then the bearded guy reached into his jacket. That's the point where your brain doesn't think in sentences anymore. It becomes pure instruction. Move. Hide. Stay low. He pulled out a handgun, not waving it, not firing, just showing it. A very quiet, very clear piece of information. The woman made this awful choking sound behind me. I dropped behind the counter and dragged her down with me just as something cracked against the glass. Maybe the gun barrel. Maybe his fist. I never found out. Dispatch was still on speaker, loud and surreal, and trying to keep me talking. I yelled that one of them had a weapon. The dispatcher said units were 2 minutes out. 2 minutes is a fake amount of time in a moment like that. It means nothing. It might as well be next year. The men didn't try to shoot through the door. Thank God for that. Instead, they ran back to the pickup, and for one brief, stupid second, I thought they were leaving. They weren't. The truck reversed, fast tires screaming lined up with the front of the store, and accelerated. It hit the concrete bollard in front of Pump 1 instead of the windows. That bollard saved our lives. I am completely convinced of that. The impact blew. The horn crushed the front bumper and sent steam hissing out from under the hood. The truck lurched sideways and died. By then, the first patrol car turned into the lot, then another. The 2 men bailed on foot. The officers caught hoodie guy in the drainage ditch behind the station. Bearded guy made it halfway to the tree line before a K9 found him, which I'm told was a humbling experience. The woman's name was Kayla. She'd left a diner a few exits down and noticed the pickup following her for miles. She pulled into our station because it was the first place with lights and cameras. She told police the men had tried to wave her over on the highway, like something was wrong with her car. That old trick. When she ignored them, they kept following. I gave my statement around sunrise, with my hand still shaking so badly the officer had to repeat half the questions. Then I went inside and looked at the front doors. There was a spiderweb crack right at eye level. On the floor near the entry, mat mixed in with the glass dust and tracked in mud, was the woman's keychain. She must have dropped it when she ran in. It had a little plastic charm on it that said, "Safe travels" in peeling blue letters. That almost made me laugh, which I think would have sounded insane to everyone there. So I kept it to myself. I quit the next day. Paul tried to talk me out of it. Offered me extra shifts, then less shifts, then a free jacket with the company logo like he was negotiating with a hostage. I told him unless the jacket came with body armor and a licensed therapist, I was done. Here's the part that stayed with me the longest, though. For weeks after, I kept replaying the moment the woman ran for the door. If I'd been in the restroom, or in the cooler, or outside, taking trash out any tiny change in timing, and she would have hit a locked door with 2 men at her back. That's all it takes sometimes. Not fate, not destiny, just timing. A working lock, a concrete post, a patrol car 2 minutes away instead of 4. People like to say surviving something changes your perspective. That's true, but not in the inspiring poster on a wall way. It changed mine by making everything feel thinner, the distance between ordinary and terrible, the glass between inside and outside, the line between a boring shift and your last one. So when people tell me gas stations feel safe because they're bright and open all night, I just nod. I know what they mean. I also know how little that actually guarantees. Places like gas stations are built to feel ordinary. They're bright, familiar, and open when everything else is closed. We stopped there for coffee for directions for one last tank of gas before heading home. Most of the time, nothing happens. But sometimes, the most normal places become the setting for the kind of night you never fully shake off. If there's one thing these stories have in common, it's this: instincts matter. The small details matter. The moment something feels off, it usually is. And sometimes paying attention is the only reason someone makes it home. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you for listening. If you enjoy true creepy stories like these, be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and come back for new videos every week. And if you've ever had a terrifying experience while working late, traveling alone, or stopping somewhere that should have felt safe, send your story in. It might be featured in a future video. Until next time, stay alert, trust your gut, and maybe don't assume the brightest place on the highway is the safest one.